All right. So this week's rants of the week.
By the way, I was gonna say like like an airplane. It's like let's do the rant of the week and don't call me baby. From Airplane, you got a line right.
Well, don't call me Shirley.
Well, I know, but like it's kind of the same. Let's do the rant of the week, baby. I'm like, hey, don't call me baby.
Yeah. Queen died with Charles and Anne at her bedside as family members, including Andrew, Edward, William, and Harry, made dash to Balmoral in vain. Actor doctors gave her hours to live. King to address nation today after death of his beloved mother, aged 96.
Yeah,
the death of Queen Elizabeth II is announced at the age of 96, ending the longest reign of any British monarch. Doctors became concerned about her health on Thursday, with family racing to be by her side. World joins Britain in mourning and celebrating the devoted sovereign who ruled the country for 70 years. Her son Charles, the former Prince of Wales, becomes king and is expected to address the nation shortly. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary became queen on February 6, 1952, aged just 25, when her father George VI died. Her reign spanned 15 British prime ministers, from Churchill to Truss, and 14 U.S. presidents. And of course, also recent update: Liz Truss is now the most recent prime minister of Britain. We're hoping that she lives up to her moniker, because it's claimed that she's like the newer rendition of Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
So
I highly doubt it.
I highly doubt it as well. So the Queen dies age 96. That's just full coverage. Yada yada yada. So it's sad. I really did like the Queen. She was a more traditional figure. She seemed to be a kind and compassionate individual. She strived for trying to make sure that there was still a focus on God and family and faith within the monarchy.
Yeah.
And I think with Charles and his sons, that's definitely on the way out.
Well, I think that who was it? Jonathan Van Maren had a really good post on it. He basically said that that basically with the Queen, the death of the Queen is basically the official death of the 20th century, and she's going to be the last Christian monarch. Which I was like, yeah, I agree with that, because like Prince Charles was not Christian monarch in any way, and I don't think like any other monarch alive would actually be like at least a devout Christian. The Queen was always known for being a very traditional devout Christian, and all of her addresses, when you see her addresses, she would have a Christmas address where she would like address like the cameras and all that, and then all these other things, and she's just the Queen showed what like she's the definition to me of the word regal. Like a really like upstanding like lady who was always proper, who was always very, very much about protecting the integrity and the reputation and the image of royalty. She was a very proper woman, and I mean I can't remember any specific scandal in her life. I mean, she was just how do you not like the Queen? Like she was just the most non-offensive person imaginable, and at least in like British politics. Like, really, she like there's really very little that she did that was bad, and she's just very solid like monarch, actually. Like, hard not to like her.
Yep.
She's the epitome of like British granny. Like having afternoon tea with crumpets.
Kind of want some tea and crumpets.
Be nice. Oh, Stephen's hungry.
We shall gather together to have tea and crumpets in honor of the Queen.
I declare this delightful.
Yeah, and then of course, if we're to honor the new king, what do we honor the new king with? Starvation and death for the climate.
Long live the king.
No. Well, but his sons are bad too.
Well, I know, but no, William's
death
not bad.
To the monarchy.
I'm not totally against William. I think William's okay.
William is far better than Henry.
Henry is
Harry. Sorry, not Henry.
Harry is obviously like,
he's a cuckold.
Well, he's compromised. He's completely compromised. He was already a bit kind of. He was always living in the shadow of his brother, until he married Meghan, and Meghan, of course, is like the black sheep of the family, like she
Yeah,
should be,
Megan
because
wanted all the attention,
she was just insufferable,
and
and
she's
she was,
like, "Oh, Harry won't be king; it'll be William first.
yep,
Let's abandon the monarchy and strike out on our own and ruin tradition." It's
yeah.
like,
Let this be a
yay.
lesson to you kids. Make sure when you marry someone properly, or else your life will completely destroyed.
Yeah, marry a
But
decent person,
yeah.
otherwise things will
Oh
go
yeah, but
poorly for you.
by the way, you scroll down and to some of the pictures, because some of the pictures are gorgeous. Of the responses, people like responding obviously with proper respect. I think a lot of people like really love the queen. I mean, she was the by far the one of the most solid like things
Mm-hmm.
that lasted out of I think she like the queen basically is the last piece of what used to be a respectable
Institution.
and honorable part of England. England used to be for like centuries a source of strength and stability and what is good and all that. The queen was the last part of that. Like she was. And with her death, I think it's going to like devolve into a lot of it's just not going to be the same. Prince Charles just does not have the same gravitas as she did. He never did, and he's actually a bit too politically compromised.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Queen, I mean, like I don't know, I've every image I've ever had of the Queen. It's just this very thoughtful, kind, soft-spoken, lady who is just always very proper. I'm like, I don't know who can have a problem with her. Now the interesting thing is that this is like the first actual change in a monarchy in most people's lifetimes. Most. I don't think very few people are alive today that had a different monarch. And all the way growing up, I mean, you and I both had the same situation. Our money always had the queen on it.
Yep.
Always. I'd never known a time when there was anything other
Anything
than
other than
the
the
queen.
queen.
Now, I have seen some bills. Some of the people have showed me like old Canadian bills that actually had the king, and I'm like, whoa, who the heck is that?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's the kid.
Feels
That's the
weird.
well, it's a weird thing, right? So that means that we're now going to have Prince Charles on our currency in Canadian currency, because all Canadian countries, or sorry, all Canadian countries, all Commonwealth countries have the monarchy on their money. New Zealand, Australia, I don't know what other Commonwealths are there. South Africa? I'm not sure. But yeah,
Yep. I
any
think
yeah,
South Africa is a Commonwealth.
yeah,
Um, yeah. There's also like Australia is of course still part of
the Commonwealth.
the Commonwealth as well as we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Yeah,
But
which means that they're going to get we're gonna get a completely
mhm.
revamped currency with like Prince Charles on our currency. That's gonna be the first time we're gonna get a king on our currency. And funny enough, this one won't last as long. Like it just won't, because Prince Charles is like what is he needs like 60s, like he's up there,
Mhm.
and Prince William is pretty much next in line, I think. So after Prince Charles, you're gonna have William taking the throne. So
Prince
it'll
Charles
probably
is
be
73 years old.
yeah. So he's up there, and who knows how long he'll last?
Yep.
Like maybe he'll last. Well, he gets the best health care, so I mean, he might last a
He
while,
might last a while,
but
but
we'll see.
we'll see.
Yeah, 10 to 20 years maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So it's an end of an era. Uh, Queen Elizabeth, I really appreciated having you as a monarch. You're like the most non-offensive public figure. I mean, in our
Well,
lifetimes.
she's kind of the end of one of these like non-offensive but well like actually solid rule like public
Mhm.
figures.
Yeah.
Like if you look back to the 90s,
hmm
when I was growing up,
hmm
you had the Queen,
Yeah.
you had Pope John Paul II,
He
the
was
last
actually
like actual good pope that we had,
yeah. Yeah.
and we had well,
Billy
it's
Graham.
yeah, we
Billy
did have
Graham.
Billy
He
Graham.
was he was he was a big figure in Christianity. He was by far the person that everyone pointed to as the standout figure for like the representative of Christianity, the one that people didn't feel offended by. So he was great.
Okay, we actually have a very interesting comment
What?
from so this is from Dark Sage on Switch. So I
Hmm.
unfortunately do not rank Elizabeth as the best monarch in English history. In my opinion, Edward VII is still the best monarch England has ever had.
Hmm.
Uh, he only reigned 10 years, but he laid the groundwork for what a lot of modern England is today, and his modernization of the English military and respect for royal traditions, amongst other things, put him ahead of Elizabeth. Believe he also could have done more had he reigned longer than the 10 years since Victoria lived to 101. So,
Hmm.
I admittedly do not know much about a whole lot of the British monarchy.
I know a little bit more.
Like I know some of the more notable individuals,
Mhm.
but I'm not well informed on this at all.
Yeah.
So
So
go
King
for it if
Edward.
you want to inform us about the British monarchy.
Yeah. So King Edward the seventh, I guess. He reigned until 1910. From
Okay.
1941, he took. I'm pretty sure he took over from Queen Victoria.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
And yeah, so like he like Queen Victoria is another major figure. But one thing I do find interesting about just as a side note about the English monarchy is that some of the most notable figures and the most highly respected figures in the British monarchy are women, which is one really interesting thing about the British monarchy because
Mm-hmm.
like you think about it, you have obviously Queen Elizabeth, whose reign wasn't really significant, but then again, she reigned at a time when the monarchy was no longer it was just more symbolic. They don't really have any power. Um, Whereas Queen Victoria was actually a queen. Then you have Queen Elizabeth I, who was the queen, that took over like most of the 1500s, and she reigned for a massively influential time. Those are three monarchs that had incredible influence. Outside of that, you have some really terrible ones and some really great ones all throughout English history. But yeah, I just think this is a significant event in the fact that Queen Elizabeth II reigned for so long. This is a monumental, once in a lifetime kind of thing. Most people lived under her watch and rule. So yeah. I will say though, I've already started running into people that are already pissing on the Queen's legacy,
Yep.
and I'm just like, she hasn't even been dead 24
She's
hours.
not even
You
cold.
can't wait. You can't wait to jump all over her, and for what? Like, oh, she was responsible for was it like the disappearing of children? I'm like, give me a freaking break. She's
She's
not
a
even like involved in
figurehead.
that. She's a figurehead. She had nothing to do with that, but you can't help yourself. Come on. Like like you can't even give her one
Yep.
day.
I
People
know that we're gonna get a whole bunch of flack because they're like, I know that there's gonna be a ton of people that are gonna have this whole thing. It's like, oh yes, the monarchs are part of the like elite rulers of the universe, and I'm like,
now she's a white ruler and she's like,
no.
complicit in all sorts of not this is the problem. People today don't know how to look at history and historical figures. To them, they themselves are the epitome, the greatest part of all history. Oh, we're the greatest. And everyone in history that doesn't fit their definition of what is the proper, the proper person or whatever, like that, has all their views and beliefs, the beliefs of what they do about race, about the gender, about everything like that. They're all horrible. So
Mm-hmm.
these people don't know how to look at history, and as a result, they just spit on everyone in history, think that they're great, and as a result, they never think that they can do it wrong because we're perfect and we're brilliant and we're the top of the evolutionary historical progression. So no, Queen Elizabeth was like verifiably and objectively a great monarch
Mm-hmm.
during her time. I would be willing to defend that. I think she was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting little side note. She actually was a trained and certified mechanic.
Wow.
She during the Second World War, she helped the royal military, the British military, and she fixed and rebuilt and built the engines on their Land Rovers that they would use during their attacks. So I thought that
Wow.
was
That's
very
pretty
interesting.
impressive.
I
That's
know.
really impressive. Yeah.
And apparently, like just being a bit of a motorhead myself. Apparently, when she would only be allowed to drive on the property. Otherwise, she had to be driven everywhere. But she had like this fairly nice car that she would drive on the property. And the Queen's consort, Philip, who died last year, apparently he would get a little scared when she drove because she would drive like a maniac. I'm like, that's hilarious.
That's pretty crazy.
So, little interesting tidbits and very interesting facts about the Queen. But now we are going to move on to our newest segment, the Nothing to See.